over here too, because I've done that before.
Oh no.
Oh, it looks like it's going. Beep, beep. Just wait and see. Yeah. Okay. We're live. So, welcome
Yay!
everybody. Welcome to another filmmaker chat. I do these monthly where I sit down with another filmmaker and we talk for about an hour about various different filmmaking things. So, welcome. I see there's 3 people here right now. Welcome. And
Woo!
woo! And just so you know, originally I was going to do this as Patreon only streams, but because of the pandemic and because I felt like everybody needed a way to connect more, I offer them to you guys for free live. But if you ever want to go back and re-watch one, or you missed one and you want to see it, you can support me on Patreon for $10 a month, and then you get access to the whole archive as well as all the other Patreon perks that the lower tiers get you. So check that out. There's a link in the description below if you want to see past ones. But please say hi to us in the chat, and let us know if you can hear us all okay. And today I'm super excited. I'm joined
Yay!
by Rose Meza, producer and writer extraordinaire.
Hello.
Welcome, Rose.
Thank you.
Rose, you've produced, well, the majority of my short films.
I feel so honored.
Yeah. Rose is the producer writer for the film Zombie Debts, which is our short film that took the film festival circuit by storm in 2019, and won several awards, which is really exciting. And she also produced Joining Call, which was the short film that we made in quarantine last year. And she's also a LinkedIn Learning producer in her day job. So you just produce all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of producing.
Yes. She's also produced a child, so it just
Yes,
keeps.
I know. Yeah, I was going to say I produced a child, and you should ask my family about the Google Docs when we travel and stuff.
Oh
It's
wow.
like a love, so I produce a lot of things. I overproduce in life, I think.
Well, that can be a good thing for a producer, maybe. Yeah, I feel like overproducing,
Yeah,
always being prepared. Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, totally.
so let's talk about producing. I have like maybe 1 or 2 writing questions, but I wanted to focus on producing because you're our first producer that we've had on the Filmmaker Chat live stream. So I'm very excited to get into that. And though I guess Petros was also a producer. Sorry, Petros. It's your main jam, though. That wasn't his main jam. So,
Okay.
first question for you is can you briefly describe what a producer does and their responsibilities for people who might not be familiar?
Yeah. So, I'll try and be brief. It's definitely a lot question. When I saw like the
Yeah.
list from you earlier, I was like, oh, it's like a not an easy one to answer. I know you just kind of covered this on your Film It Yourself series too, which I thought was really well
Oh,
done.
thank you.
But I'm definitely like, mul yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. There's multi levels to producing, right? There's like the executive level where your focus is on funding and fundraising and networking and getting money for your film, and even sourcing the material, hiring a director, hiring the crew, casting, kind of being like the godfather of all the parts. And then there's more of like the on the scene producing, maybe the more scrappy indie producing, and that's you're helping to organize the shoot,
Mm-hmm.
casting, budget, scheduling, assisting the director. I mean, you can definitely wear hats in that role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one thing I'll say is that in that role, I think a good nugget of advice is to make sure you talk to your director when you're first starting, because producing can be like so many different things, and figure out with them, you know, what the division of responsibility and the roles are, because there's definitely can be overlap. And if your director is also a producer, it's just really good to like get that out in the open before you start working on a project together, because it's not like following industry standards to a T or anything like that. And like, you know, you've said before, it can be a muddied thing of like how involved you are or not. You know, you could be you know, doing the more high level stuff and not even going to set, or you could be on set scheduling people, helping with craft services, doing everything. So
yeah,
definitely. I think that's kind of you know, where that kind of falls with roles.
Yeah. I mean, for example,
yeah, I don't know if I missed anything.
No, I think that was great.
Yeah.
For example, with Zombie Debt, you know, Rose and I was the director, she was the producer, but we were both set designing the day before the shoot because, you know, for small indie scrappy films, you might be finding yourself doing anything. And then also, I think your tip about checking with the director is so great. Like, I've said this before, but Rose is my favorite producer. And that's because when we first did Zombie Debt, or I can't remember if it was Zombie Debt or Joining Call, I'm sure it was both. But Rose came to me and she was like, what can I do to make your job easier? And I was like, oh, no one's ever asked me that before. That's amazing. I love that.
Really? Yeah. No, I'm so glad to hear that. And I definitely will take that like with me, you know, when we work together more or if I work on other projects. So yeah, it's good to hear. I will add to the list of responsibilities is the fog machine operator. You have to be very good at operating a fog machine and definitely like accidentally turning it on in the middle of a scene when actors are working. So
yeah, you had a lot of fun with that fog machine on Zombie Debt.
I had too much fun with that thing. That needed.
I think we got to plan it into every one of our films. So somehow get Rose.
I think so too.
A fog machine. So Marissa's in the chat, by the way. Our favorite makeup artist, Marissa.
Oh, hey.
Hey, Marissa.
Congratulations on the new one too.
I know.
She just had a girl.
Yeah, she did. It's amazing. Everyone's popping them out. I gotta catch up someday. What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced as a producer? And I know that can be a daunting question, but
Well, I mean, I think a big thing is, you know, being really good at project management, and that can be so tough. I mean, I definitely on my own have like my own focus issues. So it's tough when you've got like 15 different things happening at once and trying to like stay focused on the task at hand without getting too wrapped up in something else. That can definitely be a big challenge with thing. And then I think too is like having that backup to the backup plan, because things are going to fall through. And that has been like when I've been tested the most as a producer is like, you know, when you get somewhere and something's not right and it's like, okay, how do we pivot from here and not freaking out? So I think, you know, keeping your calm, your cool. And then the last thing I'll say is like probably killing your darlings. I think across the board in like really in any job, you know, not holding on to like the things that you just won't let go of. But I think in film, especially when you're a writer, producer, director, you get a certain vision in your head about how you want things to go and be able to be flexible with that. And that's definitely at times where, you know, that's come up against me where I'm like, no, but I wanted to do it like this, you know, and like that. So I think there are, you know, those are some of the big challenges. And I think wrapped up in all of that, and maybe isn't talked about as much, is like really like having, sorry, there's like a trash truck outside. I don't know if anyone can.
Just in time for the live stream. See, this is real life filmmaking challenges that you might have.
But yeah, I think just being able to stay focused and stay calm is like a really good, I think, nugget to face those big challenges, because it can be really easy to get worked up and freak out.
Yeah.
Especially when you're to manage. And I think the other thing too is just with that project managing, staying organized. That can be a challenge because sometimes it takes a little bit extra work to stay on top of organization, but in the long run, you're like, it's so much better for it when you have things organized a certain way. So, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the stay calm one is a great tip because, as a director, that's something I try to do too. And I actually had Timmy Morgan on from our film Joining Call, and we talked about how he was like, you were so cool and collected when I was messing up this one thing or whatever with his because his camera, he only had a 8 gigabyte card. And
Yeah.
so,
Oh, I remember this.
so we'd have to film a
You're
shot.
like, what is this? 20 or 2006?
Yeah.
Like,
We'd have to film a take, and then he would have to instantly dump the card, and poor Timmy was like super stressed out about it, and I was like, it's okay, it's all right. And then we were talking about it on here, and he was like, you were so calm and collected, and I was like, oh, don't worry, I was having an internal panic attack. I just can't project that to you because then you'll freak out. Like you have to, when you're in that leadership position, you have to stay calm and collected because your vibe will be projected onto everyone else and then they'll freak out. So, especially as like a producer or a director, you have to like keep your cool even though you might be having a mini panic attack inside.
Yes. I mean, I think it's funny too. I think back to like days and like, I got my bachelor's in film, radio TV film, and like working on those sets in college or like right out of college where people with big personalities who thought they were like the budding Spielberg,
Oh, yeah.
were like at his throats, and I'd just be sitting in the background like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy, and it, the films were way worse because of it, because people couldn't agree. And so
it's always
or
reflected.
people were just losing their shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. So I think that is so important, is to be able to keep your calm and cool and not freak out at people.
Yeah. What, film students thinking they're the next Spielberg? I've never heard of this. What are you talking about?
No, never.
Never, ever. Sorry,
Never. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I probably was one of them, though. I probably was.
I mean, we all were in our own way.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think that's why it's like so funny, because like it's such a cliche for film school, but it, like, me and my friend in film school, we would at conversations we'd overhear in like the editing room and things like that, and we're just like, these people are so hilarious. But I think we all have to be, in order to like get to,
yeah,
you have to have a little bit of
I mean, you have to
craziness.
believe in yourself to make it, for sure. Yeah. So you've already touched on it. Like, we're blasting through these questions. You already touched on it.
I know.
But how important, this sounds like a dumb question, it's a leading question, but how important is organization when producing?
So
not at all, right?
Not at all. Just put all of your files that you get from anyone, any contracts, just put them in the trash can. You don't even need it, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important. And honestly, it's something even in my own life I could work on. I mean, I am like very type A, but I think, at some point we're going to talk about software tools. And I was like, I don't use enough software tools to help myself stay organized. And I know
interesting.
Because I mean, I would say don't fight against that either. Like, there are a ton of like project management tools out there to stay organized. But it is super helpful. And I think it's helpful in that, you're going to be on top of things, but if anything happens, like if there's an accident on set or something goes wrong or someone gets hurt, if you have the insurance paperwork in a certain place, and like, even if it's Google Doc, and that all that stuff is there, again, that's going to help you stay calm in those situations. If you're on top of your organization, that's just going to literally pay tenfold how you get your shoot done. And then you can that organization take however you figure out like what works for you, and recreate it for every film, like
Mm-hmm.
templatize it. And then work on another film, you're going to know where everything you need is. You're going to know what process needs to happen. So I think that is super important to saving your sanity and to helping you be a great producer and be able to manage any project you're going to work on. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
totally. Yeah.
And I will say, oh, I'll just say, Ash, that one thing that's been helpful too is like when we first started working together in Zombie Dat, I hadn't really done anything outside of, learning content. And it was super helpful because you already had documents and different procedures that you use to organize things. And so when I needed, a set call list or whatever, you'd be like, oh, I have one from this shoot. And then we could just recreate it. So
Yeah.
I think because you're organized, you were able to like get it to me in 3 seconds. And, we figured it out, and it didn't have to take us 20 minutes to recreate a sheet, for
Yeah.
something. So just keep those things in mind.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think Google Docs is like I just live and die by Google Docs. It's amazing. Uh
Yeah. Same.
and if you can just have, that's why if it wasn't for Google Docs, I wouldn't have had, this like, oh, I have the call sheet. I'll just send you this call sheet because I have everything, like every project I do, I just like have a folder for it and I organize everything in there. And that's been just really life changing to have Google Docs and then the sheets, and it's like all free. You don't have to pay for,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you just have to have a Google account, right? Pretty sure it's free.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm paying money. Um,
It is free.
okay.
They did recently start charging after a certain amount of like space.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I
that was a
am
new
paying
thing,
for
but
that. That is true.
me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was like, I have to pay for this because I don't have any more room. But
I
it's also
know.
like where I've kept half of my organization for life in general, like the
Mm,
last 15 to 20 years. Like,
me too.
so
And I
yeah.
agree with you. I wasn't super organized. I wasn't super organized with things until I actually started working at lynda.com, and they
Yeah.
forced like a workflow organization
Yeah.
on us as employees.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I should do this with everything. And that was when I started
Yeah.
getting organized. But like I pull out like my college film hard drives and it's just a disaster. It's all over the place. Like even the binder, I do have a binder with like all of the production contracts and all that stuff, but it's not organized. It's a nightmare. It's just everything's shoved in there.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
So I highly do recommend organizing it. It makes your
Yeah.
life so much
Marie
easier.
Marie Kondo the shit out of your life and
Yes.
your productions. In-
Yeah. So this is kind of a fun question because you are a producer writer. I was wondering, is producing something you wrote different from producing something someone else wrote? Because with Zombie Debt, you wrote
yeah.
it. With Joining Call, it was written by Pat Edwards. So I'm curious your perspective
Yeah.
on that.
Totally. I mean, for sure. It was different. I think that, but I mean, I think there were like kind of pros and cons to each side. Like it was kind of nice having less pressure in that I didn't like. It almost felt like I wasn't even doing enough because I was like, I'm not writing it. Like, so I think that like that's like a big thing that you don't have to worry about. And if there were things that we needed to work on with Pat, it was kind of on Pat, and to rewrite she's things.
You're a writer, right?
Yeah, totally. Um, but on the opposite end of that, like writing and producing, you just feel like it's like your baby that you've raised and watched grow up, and like you're like, oh, like look at them out at the film festivals. And it's even though Joining Call was amazing and I still like worked super hard on that too, it just feels like it's someone else's kid, that you
Mm-hmm.
helped like get there. But I think there is that little specialness of like when you write that you just feel proud that like not only did you produce this, but you wrote it. So, but I think, not writing things is cool too, because you get to have a whole other perspective, and you get that other person who gets to be part of the conversation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be fun and creative and challenging in other ways.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And you could
So
still
yeah.
have like creative inputs and whatnot. Like, I'm pretty sure when Pat and I approached you with it, I don't think we had like assigned genders or anything to the characters yet. And so that was a fun, like the three of us having the creative freedom during casting to come up with ideas.
Totally.
And then I always think about how you had this brilliant workaround in editing with feedback where there was a problem where Matt's character, Matt Young, is supposed to push his chair back and stand up, and we see his boxers. The classic Zoom joke that we've all seen now a million times, but it was fresh and original when we read the script. Uh, but it just took too long for like the angle of his camera for him to like stand up, and like so he had to push his chair back and stand up, and it was too long, and Rose was like, "Oh, just cut to Zoe before and then cut back." And I was like, "Oh, this is so brilliant. Why didn't I think of that?" So I love that, even if it's not your baby, I love working with people like you where we can give creative feedback still
Totally.
in all parts of
Yeah,
the process.
I know, and I appreciate that. My input is, regarded as such, like when we are, going over the final edits and things like that. Because I mean, I will say that I do also have a background in editing as well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I don't edit much now, and you know, I've edited like my daughter's like 1 year old like highlight reel or whatever, and that was fun because I got to like get back on the cutting room floor. But I think that's also helpful because when I look at things, I can add that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, hey, well, there's this trick we can use, or we cut away to someone else for a second and then cut back, and like, oh, magically time hasn't passed,
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. I forgot about that. So
Yeah.
thanks for bringing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
no problem. I was thinking, I don't know why I was thinking about it the other day. Oh, because I rewatched it recently. I was like, I'm gonna rewatch this. And I felt like, I was like, is this weird? Oh well, I love it. I'm gonna rewatch it anyway.
Yeah, no.
And I got to that part and I was like, that was so brilliant of Rose to
uh,
solve that problem, because it was just so awkward before, like seeing him push the chair
yeah.
back. And the funny part is, it's just like for a fun behind the scenes, is like Matt did multiple test shots of that and sent them to me. And so I just had these like multiple shots of Matt just like pushing his chair back and standing up so that I could see his boxers. And
The
I was like,
crotch shot.
this is
Yes.
so weird. This is a weird
Yeah.
thing that we're testing, but we had to test it to get like the angle just right and everything, because otherwise you couldn't
Yeah. Yeah.
really see the boxers.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's such a weird, funny thing.
Unless he pushed his chair a certain way, and yeah,
Hmm.
totally.
Um, okay, so next question is, how do you handle balancing microfilm budgets, and do you find the limitations restraining or creatively driving?
Yeah. Um, so we kind of talked about this together at like a film
Gen Con,
fest,
was it, I
like
think?
Gen Con. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was such, if you do have a chance, I would totally recommend watching that whole, I think it's on their Facebook page still.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they did like a whole budgeting for indie or like short films um,
Like a panel.
panel. And
Mm-hmm.
and it was just filled with like really good nuggets. But I think like, basically is being scrappy and realistic about your budgets. One of the pieces of advice I gave was like, have three budgets, have your budget for like, if you literally didn't get any money, or if you're paying for this out of your pocket, have the budget you've fundraised a little bit, and then like the dream budget. And I know before the quarantine, Ash, you and I were working on a project where we were like possibly gonna go out to like Portland or like find like a Airbnb, but it was all dependent on like how much we raised for the project.
Yeah.
So, you know, something where we found something locally, like in the San Bernardino mountains, or we could like, if we got enough money, we could fly the whole cast somewhere. So it's just thinking about, what would work. But I actually think for me, I think it's really creatively driving, because I love this thought process as well by Drew Boyd. He's a great writer. Check him out. It's thinking inside the box versus thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you actually do need restraints to be creative. And if you don't have any restraints, it's like, I don't know. I've seen plenty of big budget films that suck. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really mean that you're going to have a great film. So I think that it, when it comes to balancing the budget, just thinking about what you can work with, and honestly kind of writing to what you can work with as
Yeah.
well, and making it. Um, so I think that's a big place uh, to help with all that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm writing, that's something that like the Duplass brothers talk about in their book, which I highly recommend if you haven't read it and you want to be like an indie filmmaker, check out their book. It's amazing. But they talked about how their first feature film, they were like, well, what assets do we have? And,
Yeah.
let's write a story around that, which was so great.
So smart. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And same thing with the short film that you were talking about that hopefully someday we'll shoot.
Yeah.
We picked Portland as like our dream location, but also
Yeah.
because I happen to know people in Portland, and it was like, well, maybe we can use their place to stay at instead of renting a
Totally.
hotel, or maybe we can
Yeah.
even shoot on their property or whatever. And actually, they were just telling me recently that Portland also has a really great film program where they will, if your budget is like $1 million, or higher, they'll pay for like 16% of your budget. If you, I know, right?
Oh,
We
wow.
got to talk about this.
I know.
let's
We need to raise
let's
$1 million.
shoot I know, right?
Yeah.
There's just that little factor.
Yeah, just a
But
little bit of a hump, but no big deal.
yeah, but they're actually like really friendly to people coming and shooting versus if we tried to shoot in LA, I'm sure permits are going to be expensive and locations are going to be expensive. So, planning around that can be really good as well.
Totally.
We have a question in the chat from Flippin' Zippo. Hello,
Ooh.
Flippin' Zippo. And he says, my only real question, how does a writer not want to change the script mid-production? Seems like small refinements would be very tempting. Ooh, that's a good question.
That is. So I actually, even with Zombie Debt, I think at some point I went in and actually made some changes to the
I do
script.
remember that. Like, I feel like even the night before, you're like, here
I
you go.
was,
I punched it up. And I'm like, ah!
I was like, here's a new one. I was like, guys, here's a new one. So, I mean, honestly, I think that is a little bit part of the journey with making. I mean, anywhere you go, there's always, if you're even on TV shows, there's, the blue script, the pink script, the yellow script, the orange script. Like, that is part of the process, is that the writing is always changing. And that is part of the killing your darlings, like actually, being okay with that. And I think actors are expected to know that, like, there can be changes to the script. I did feel bad personally that I was like sending them changes like the night before they were coming to film, but maybe it was like a couple nights before, but still it was like, okay, there's some pretty major changes, so good luck. But I think that, it was something I obviously like sent to you too, Ash, and was like, hey, is this cool?
Mm-hmm. They weren't like
Because
major, like a whole new
yeah,
location. I think it
yeah.
was like dialogue punch ups and stuff like that were
There,
like
yeah,
easy to
there were, it
handle.
was mostly just dialogue changes. There were no like location changes and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I think tweaking throughout the process is part of that. And that might be something where the writer, director, and producer do have a chat beforehand as well. Like, what are the expectations for changes? Like, if you bring us a change where there's like a whole location change, or like total, like, I don't know, there's 15 dogs in the shoot now, like, where, what, like, we can't,
Yeah. Where
which
are we
I kind of
getting
want to do now
15
because I love
dogs? Yeah.
I
That'd be
love it.
amazing.
But yeah, I know. But yeah, I think, there needs to be some agreement that there is a line that you can't cross with changes. But yes, refinements and changes are going to happen even as close as up to the night before you film.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And even as a director, I sometimes change the script on set. You know, like sometimes I and the
Yeah.
actors both change the script because all of a sudden it's like, you know, we're there, we're doing the scene, and maybe the actor tries something different that, you know, we haven't, you know, isn't in the script, but I love it and they love
Totally.
it. And so we decide to go with it. So changes do happen. I think, like you said, if they're manageable changes, that's okay. And I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
embracing that in filmmaking is what makes it so fun. Like you do want to prepare as much as possible, but being sporadic and in the moment and having something really like beautiful or funny or interesting
Hmm.
happen on camera that you weren't planning can also be really cool if you can capture it. But yeah, as
Yeah.
long as you have the time, I think that's where I think doing all the prep work allows you to know if you have the time to go in a different direction or try
Totally.
something new. Because I've had shoots where I was like, I've told the whole cast and crew where I'm like, all right, look, we barely are gonna make the day and we
Yeah.
only have one day at this location.
Yeah.
So we just gotta knock it out the park and not delay on
Yeah.
anything. So it just
Say
depends
the
on
lines. Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
shoot and
Well, I think too, even like, yeah, but it is so true when you are like in it and the actors are finally, you started rolling, they're in the moment. There even is stuff, I've seen where there's where there's just this one that the actor is tripping up on, like when I was trying to say writing right or whatever, like it's just that's not going to work, and they keep like tripping up on that.
mhm.
Um, what is that one? Like I'm sure you've seen it on YouTube, the flaky buttery crust
The what?
commercial that these like older people are trying to make. Flaky buttery crust.
Oh, no, I haven't. I'll have to check it out.
Okay, I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah.
It's like these like older people who are in a restaurant and they're, patrons or whatever, and they're trying to get them to film this line, and the guy just keeps messing it up over and over and over again.
Oh
And his
man.
wife is like so frustrated, and they're like, "Well, then you say it." So she tries to say it and she messes it up. Like
Oh
it's like
man.
nobody can say it. So yeah, I mean, in that moment it's like we might need to change the line.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, so minor changes, can occur while you're even filming in the middle of it. But I do think, also setting that expectation with your actors, like there's going to be times where we'll have time for you to riff, and we try couple different takes.
Mhm.
And there's that space for it, or there's not.
Yeah.
Letting them know ahead of time too is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the core of it is you want to make a good film, right? So
Yeah.
as long as, you know, changes are okay as long as they are making the film better. So like I remember I think
Yeah.
you sent me the zombie debt script with the changes like the night before or something, and I was like, well, they're better jokes. So okay. You know, like they
Yeah.
were they
Yeah.
were
And
funny.
that's why
Mhm.
I like literally had a moment where I just like re-looked at it and I was like, this is all wrong. Like, and it wasn't that it was just there was this one joke that like I was trying to tie into the beginning, and I was like, it's not that funny. I need to let go.
Mm.
I need to like kill my darling and actually pivot. And I think what I wrote was a lot funnier. And there was even a joke that like my husband's like, oh, you should say something about avocado toast here. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And even you and I were both like, I don't know.
Mhm.
And then we tried it and we're like, it works. It works. It's unfortunate, but we're going to keep it.
Yeah.
Like we even tried like another take, didn't say it, or we tried a couple different things. I will also add that, I'm not like a screenwriter extraordinaire or anything like that, but I remember in school, in my screenwriting class, we had a screenwriter come who talked to us, and he had written the screenplay for Dukes of Hazzard or something, and he
Mhm.
was super bitter because you have to also realize as a writer that the producer and the director have and can have. I know there's been disputes about it on the back end of films, but where a writer sells their film and then they watch it and they're like, that's not what I wrote. Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
or, percentage of how many words have to stay. So do know that if you are going into this on the screenwriting end, especially when it comes to professional film, if that's what you're looking for, there can be changes from the producer and director team, and it doesn't look like anything you wrote. So writers unfortunately get the shaft a lot of the time. So unless the
Mm-hmm.
producer and director like us are super kind and want to have Pat in on all the meetings and be a part of that, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is important. But
Right.
that can be definitely a place where you write a script and then sell it, and it's not, you're like embarrassed that your name's on it. So
Yeah. Yeah, and
yeah.
honestly, in like the major filmmaking industry, like major feature films, usually the writer isn't there on set, like you said, or part of any of the
Yeah.
planning. They
Got it. Yeah.
sell the script to a studio that options it for X amount of years. And what an option means is they can make that script within a certain amount of years. I think usually it's like 5. And that means the screenwriter can't sell that script to anyone else for 5 years. Um, but if the studio doesn't make the movie, then they can go and option it somewhere else. Though sometimes trends and whatnot happen, and so it becomes dated or whatever. But usually they sell the script and that's it. They're done. It's not
Yeah.
their thing
Yeah.
anymore, which can be very weird. So usually the rewriting in a major motion picture is from the rest of the team and not the writer itself.
Yeah. It's like the
Yeah.
studio. Yeah.
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 Flippin' Zippo has another question. He says, "Is this why improv
Ooh.
is so fundamental?" And he's talking about acting. I asked, like, "You mean acting, right?" And he says, "Yes, even the production has to improvise." Oh, that too. Yeah. So I mean, acting improvisation um, is, there's um, different directors feel differently about that, and I'm sure producers too. Personally, I love encouraging my actors to do improv because I want them, just like we were talking with Pat with joining call, and like including him in every step of the production process as the writer, but giving him, more than just the writer part. Same with actors. Like, I like to give them that opportunity so that they feel like they're bringing something to the table, and like they're also giving something, and it's a part of them as well.
Yeah.
I just personally think that people do better work when they feel like
Yeah.
it's their, thing as well. Um,
I think of like Iffy's scene at the end of joining call in the
oh
credits.
yeah, uh-huh.
And Pat wrote that. Like he wrote a couple lines, but he was like an ending scene or exit scene or whatever. And like let him go nuts. And we did. And I actually helped edit that part. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just so funny. Like some of the stuff he came up with was just so good. And even like as he was going, we're like, oh,
Do
like now you
this.
should pretend
Yeah.
to chew the gum or do that. Like, and so, I think that they're like having that room can be really fun. And I'm sure if he had a blast,
Yeah.
being able to like take his character to that uh
Mm-hmm.
moment, and not have like, oh, I have to memorize whatever. I can just like kind of have fun with it.
Yeah, yeah, because he's a professional comedian. So, like, giving him, the space to be funny and do what he's best at, I think is great. And then, as far as like production wise, like, there's definitely times where on set, and I think this probably is more true for producers a lot of times, where you have to improvise, where it's like, oh, a problem pops up, and now you have to figure that out on your feet.
Totally. I mean, that is like half the job, is like literally being, and that's why I always am like, have a backup to your backup to your backup, because you just never know what's gonna happen. And especially when you're working with like kids or animals, things like that, you always just
I was just, yeah,
Winston.
Winston.
My cat was in.
Yeah.
Well, even like, in training call, we laugh about how like there's all these like, things impeding the call, but we also were, as we were filming, having those things happen, like
Yeah.
lighting changes, or a storm was happening outside, or someone's kid who wasn't supposed to be one of the kids
Is in the
interrupting their parents
background. Yeah.
in the back, like, what's going on? So just like, it was just so funny because it was just real life, imitation of real life. It's just you have to be able to be quick on your feet for sure.
Totally. Yeah. Um, let's see. One of Flipping Zippo says, "You say kids are animals, right?" uh, I don't know that we said that, but they're just as challenging.
Kids or
Yeah.
animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could definitely be a challenge. Even for this channel, I frequently have my dog Spence in videos, and someday I'm gonna edit together a like gag reel of all the ridiculous times I'm trying to get him to do something and he doesn't because he looks flawless and beautiful in the final edit, but there's so many times where it's been like 10 minutes of me trying to get him to just jump on a chair and I'm like, just up.
Oh my gosh.
Up, come on, up.
Come on.
He's
come
like,
on. You got
nah, I'm good.
No, I don't. Yeah. I'm good.
I
would really love to see that.
Yeah, there's some funny ones. There's definitely ones where he like leaves before his cue to leave or something, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, all right. Well, we're done here,
I guess we got it. He's gotten better though. He's to the point now where he knows he gets treats, so he's like, oh, okay, I'll listen. But so we feel like, you know what, we were talking about joining call. Let's jump to that question. So you produced a film in quarantine last year, 100% remotely. Can you tell us about that experience and any challenges you faced along the way that, were different for a normal production?
Yeah, I mean, like I said with you, there were a lot of things going on in the background that, you can't control someone else's house that you're remotely recording in. I mean, and I will say that like as much producing and helping I did, like Ash was like the savior of the day when it came to filming in quarantine. You were so good about planning and prepping ahead of time, and I think that was really helpful too. Is we got on calls with each actor and saw them in their space and made sure everything was working.
I think that was your idea
even like
too. You were like, let's have meetings with them and see their space, which was brilliant.
Yeah, because I mean, then when the time came to film, we had already looked at that and they had already, like, for the most part, gotten things into the places they need to be, because that did take a long time. I mean, that was a long meeting with each actor or team of actors. And so it was just super helpful to have that done ahead of time. But I do think, again, like, I love the creative challenge of also filming in a quarantine. And I love being able to tell people that I produced a movie, like, in the middle. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, like, I completely forgot I produced this movie. Like, it's so great. And it was such a great way to, like, get those creative, juices flowing. And, but yeah, I think we were working with multiple levels of cameras, different mics, different time zones. I mean, we were filming people in LA, Chicago, and Pennsylvania. I think somewhere in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It was a lot, and trying to get all of that, done at the same time.
And wasn't Natalie in Utah, I think, as well?
Yes, I think someone was also in like 4 states. But I think we did a really good job of pulling it together. And I also think we were good about like not being too unrealistic about how long it was going to take, and thinking about scheduling. I know, Ash, you also did a really good job of like, if an actor was going to be in certain scenes, we'd had people pop in and out, so they wouldn't have to just be sitting there all day. So we thought about that. And then we also even thought about, we had a scene with someone's kid and it wasn't going to work time that we filmed. So you guys got those pickup shots the following day. And just really thinking about like kind of everything that could and did go wrong, and like staying calm when, yeah, exactly. And staying calm when, like people were pausing in and out and we couldn't tell if the recording was going right or if they had to stop to offload their 8 GB card.
We love you,
So,
Timmy.
I know you did a great job, Timmy. And I will say, like, you were so good about taking care of that every time. And I'm glad you figured that out at the beginning. So it actually went really smoothly. So, and it was a fun day for sure.
So fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I know you've.
Oh, another.
Oh, maybe you were going to say
Go.
it.
I was going to say another challenge that we had was like, there was no craft services,
Yep.
things like that. I don't know if that was where you're going.
Yep.
But, that was another place where I was like, okay, how can we make our actors who are, helping us create this film feel welcome? And so in the budget, we also budgeted for, I went to like Target and got a ton of like snacks and a little whiteboard for everyone so they could slate with that, and different things so that they felt welcome. They could open this box and use that and have like craft services while they were filming that we couldn't provide them. And I think we also even got like some coffee coupons for them and things like that too. So they were able to like really enjoy all of that.
Yeah, I think that really, because I don't think they were expecting that, and I think that really just made them feel appreciated, because they're giving us their time in a stressful time,
Yeah,
for sure. And a lot of them, like Iffy's very busy, so he's just fitting it in for us, which was very nice. So I think people really appreciated that, and that was a brilliant idea for sure. Let's see.
Yeah, they did too. Because I really I a card and just said like good luck today or break a leg or whatever.
Aww.
And just wanted them to feel welcome in that way too. So
that's so fun. Yeah, everybody like thanks me for it. I'm like, I had nothing to do with it. Like, I thank Rose.
Like, oh yeah, I did it all.
Yeah, right.
I still have one of the things I sent everyone was these little like guys for your
so
drinks
fun.
or whatever.
That's hilarious.
And this one is my husband's name. So I bring this with. I haven't not done much traveling, but my goal is to like hang it on my drinks if I go places and send him a picture if he's not there and be like, you follow
my travel husband. So.
Yes.
Travel size husband.
Just hanging out.
Yeah. Let's see. We probably have time for one more question. And if you guys have any more questions in the chat, feel free. Let's see. Is there a question that we haven't done that you feel more inclined?
I think a couple things that I had written, like, what makes a good producer. I don't know if I've talked about that,
sure,
but I think like going over that. And then also maybe talking about like advice in general.
Yes. Yeah. I always like to end with that for sure.
Yeah. So I think, like overall just being like super driven, working well under immense pressure and, going with the flow, and having that decisiveness. I think that's a big thing as a producer. I've had to really work on like finding your voice, finding how you feel about things and being able to communicate that really well. And I think that also makes for a really good team, is being able to communicate to your team.
Communicate.
As I like to communicate. And then like, being driven, the problem solver, having that creative touch. And then the other thing I added was high emotional intelligence in a perfect world. But I think that's really important to think about. Honestly, everyone could work with like working on their emotional intelligence in general. But I think especially for the job is just being able to read people and know when your actor can't do another take or when they're getting frustrated. I mean, that for directors, and knowing how to work with your director, knowing when you can tell something is getting under someone's skin or someone's freaking out, or just being able to de-escalate and not react inappropriately to things is really, really important as a producer and
safety
in life
too. Like you're talking about knowing when an actor can't do their take, but also knowing if it's safe, if they feel safe.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, it's good too to be that person to think about, hey, if my actor's doing this fight scene in the middle of the street, like we need to make sure that this is safe for them and we're not like asking really incredibly inappropriate things of our crew, of our team, because they're not going to want to work with you again
Mm-hmm.
if they don't feel safe. If they
Yeah, totally.
And I think like overall, advice for producing is really just to do it. I think about when I first came to you with Zombie Debt, and I was like, "Oh, here's this idea. I haven't even written it. You should just do something with it." And you're like, "No, no, you should work with me." And I was like, "Okay." And then we did, and it was great. And I feel like if I hadn't followed through and done that, I wouldn't have made Joining Call. I wouldn't be probably working with you on other projects. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that really opened the door. And I just remember Zombie Debt was a long day because we only wanted to work like one day
Yeah. Well, we
on
only
the
had
set.
like the equipment, I think, for one day because
Yeah,
we
it was
had it
like,
on loan.
and then I think it was like too expensive to ask our actors to drive
Right.
again
Yeah.
to like Santa Barbara area from LA for two. So we're like, okay, we're gonna get this done in one day. And at the end of the day, I was like super exhausted and I was just laying there and I was like, that was so fun though. And I wanted to do it all over again. And
Yeah.
so I think like, following through and doing something that is going to feel really hard and really difficult. But then on the other end of it, it's like this great reward if you've actually made something creative that you're going to get to watch for years and years to come.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reward in it
Totally.
for sure.
Yeah. Mark, again, I'm harping on the Duplass brothers again because I'm such a fan. But I just listened to a podcast episode where Mark Duplass was interviewed. I think it was the Armchair Expert podcast, which is really great. If you haven't checked it out, they interview a lot of people in the film industry. It's Dax Shepard. But he said, that his favorite part of filmmaking is having that feeling where you feel like you're 12 again. And that perfectly describes like, Zombie Dead or just any of my film, if we're not on set and we all feel like we're 12 again playing make believe and having like the time of our life, then you're doing it wrong. You're just doing it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I just think of myself sitting next to the fog machine and being like, we need more fog. Like, totally 12-year-old Rose. Just like, turn the machine on. You guys were like, okay, I think this is too much. Like, can we clear the room out a little bit here? And just like, come on. So for sure, I think that's a really great way to put it.
That is the
Yeah.
thing. If you hire Rose, that's part of her contract. She has to have a fog machine. It's written in.
I have to have a fog machine and I will bring it with me. Like you're saying,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
It
Yeah.
was so fun. I will say this one final question from Flipping Zippo, which I think is more for fun. But he said, "Have you ever had a big dumb construction worker roll onto your set? Because I was that guy today. Good job, Flipping Zippo."
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I think you had asked in the questions about like a big problem you have to
Oh
solve,
yeah, yeah.
and I will bring this back to construction because I was producing a course on construction,
Oh.
and if you are a construction worker, you know that like bringing a filming crew there can be a little scary because you don't want you know even like if you're filming someone at a certain angle and it doesn't look like they're tied off correctly, like OSHA can be like, oh, what the heck, this is a violation, even though
Oh.
you're not. Like there's a lot of kind of trepidation there. And I had gotten to Phoenix to film this course, and we had like two or three people who were like, yeah, come on to the construction site this week. And like that Monday, we're like, hey, actually, we really aren't comfortable with you coming. And I was
Oh
like, oh
no.
crap, like what do we do? So that was a big thing that we had to like learn to pivot, and know that also, if we are going to work with construction companies, that might be a place where we have to let them watch parts of the course beforehand or things like that to make sure that they're like, yeah, everything looks great, we're comfortable with that, rather than them feeling like, well, I don't know. So that just reminds me of that time and how we were like, oh my gosh, we got to figure this out like in the next 2 days. We had a couple things lined up for interviews, but we were like, where are we going to get this B construction site?
Mm.
You do also have to think of like the industry you're filming in and you're filming around, and even had things signed off saying like you guys have permission, and it still was like, actually, we talked about it and we don't feel comfortable. And I'm glad that
Wow.
they said that, but at the same time it was like, couldn't you have told me last week? Me,
Yeah.
not like 2 days before we're
Oh,
supposed to film with
wow.
you. So yeah, I think totally. And again, that goes back to having the backup plan to the, so they're like, we had talked to you about it and being like, oh, okay, well, we'll just go back to this group and talk to them. So yeah,
Oh, wow. Wow.
sure. Yeah.
Flipping Zippo says that was a much more insightful answer than I was expecting.
Nice.
She actually did have an answer for your joke. That must
Yes,
be
there you
stressful
go.
too, because you must have, like, filming on a construction site, you must have extra layers of concern for safety for the crew as
Yeah.
well.
Yes, that when we got out there, there was one, and we had to be escorted around. We had to
Wow.
wear hard hats. We had to wear certain foot covering boots, things like that, because obviously we're in a construction area and you have to be safe. And they, of all people, know that safety is first. And they even went through like a safety briefing with
Oh,
us before
wow.
we even filmed. And it went really well. It was great because I felt like my crew was safe, and that I enjoyed that they were there with us the whole time, so we could ask them, okay, can we film this? And they'd be like, yeah, that's great. Or actually, I don't think you should walk onto this one area. And so I think it was good to think about those things, and I learned a lot on that shoot for sure
Wow.
about filming in different locations and things you got to think about.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
sound was a nightmare. I'm only guessing.
Well, a lot of that was B-roll,
Oh, okay. Okay.
so we definitely, all of our enclosed areas that were nowhere near construction.
Oh, good.
We also got an Airbnb, and we got approval from the Airbnb to film there. So we had people come there too. So we
Oh,
were filming in like architect office or in the Airbnb
gotcha.
where it is wanting.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining, Rose. This has been so fun. I can't believe it's
Thanks
already an
for having
hour.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Time flies.
I will say, if you want to hear Rose talk more about producing in quarantine, we were on my friend Johnny Taylor's podcast, Hipsterocracy,
Oh yeah.
and we chatted about the experience with Pat filming in quarantine. So if you are super interested in that, Rose can tell you more stories there. um,
Yeah, definitely recommend it.
and also, there's links to Zombie Debt and Joining Call in the description below, so you can watch those films there as well. And I would tell you Rose's social handles, but she doesn't really do that, so we're not going to do that. We're
I'm
working
not
on
a
getting
social
her
media person.
a professional
I
social
need to get a
media.
like professional something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but Lockpicking Engineer says thanks and goodbye. So does Flipping Zippo. Thank you, everybody, for your questions in the chat and
Yeah,
joining
thanks.
us. And have a great Friday. It's Friday. I totally forgot. That's amazing. I'm excited.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's homemade ramen night in this household. I'm very excited.
Woo.
I'll send you a picture.
So when can I come over?
I know, right?
I'll be there in an hour.
Right? We should when
Yeah.
quarantine's over, you and Josh and
Oh my gosh.
your daughter should come over and we'll make you guys dinner and hang out.
Yeah.
I just miss people,
Love that.
guys. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. It's not even funny. I'm going crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us and we will see you guys later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
End stream. Okay.